Hello and welcome to the Football Word. I'm Doug Kide. This is Zach Cox. And let's start off. Celtics have made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and the Patriots have been representing very well at TD Garden really throughout the last couple seasons, but especially here in the playoffs. We saw Bill Belichick there yesterday. It looked like Dion Lewis, Eric Rowe. Who else was there that you saw?
Corey Brissett, Malcolm Mitchell. It was a bit of a smaller crowd last night than it has been earlier in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've been every single Celtics home game. You'll see at least half a dozen or so Patriots representatives there. They're really kind of taking to heart that whole intercity support deal, or they just like watching basketball from courtside.
Yeah, I mean, can you really blame them?
I cannot.
It seemed like the Celtics kind of saved Belichick until they needed him, threw him up there on the jumbotron when the Celtics really needed to make a run there at the end, and it seemed to work. So I think that Belichick, I mean, he might have to start traveling to Cleveland. He might have to just go on the road with these guys, and really the whole team might have to.
Just bring him along. He can be their unofficial mascot.
And it would be kind of a nice troll job to have Belichick go to games in Cleveland anyway, just because of the whole Browns history. You know, didn't work out so well for the Browns. Haven't won a Super Bowl since then. He's won 5 for the Patriots.
I know. It's kind of a shame that the biggest Celtic supporter of this Patriots crew really is LeGarrette Blount.
Yeah.
And now it's looking more and more likely that he's not going. Well, we still don't know with that whole weird situation, but I don't think he was in the house last night.
No.
But he is. He's really been kind of not even this season, but really throughout the last couple of years. Jay King over at Mass Live actually wrote a really good piece during the season. He talked to Blount about his kind of budding friendship with Isaiah Thomas and just all those guys on the team. Blount's a guy that's really just taken. He's not from Massachusetts. I don't think he was a Celtics fan growing up or anything. But since he's been here, he's really just kind of embraced that team unity.
Yeah, it seems like Blount is a pretty easy guy to get along with, and it seems like the Celtics have really embraced him. And yeah, that's pretty cool. It looked like, judging from his Instagram, that he was playing Madden last night. So skipped one game, but I'm sure that he might be back there at some point in TD Garden. Speaking of Blount real quick, it surfaced that no team had used that tender on a player since the Seattle Seahawks in the year 2000 with a guard named Frank Beatty. So that just shows how rare it is for a team to use that tender. And just to recap, it was the May 9th tender, unrestricted free agent tender. If LeGarrette Blount doesn't sign with the team by July 22nd, then he basically has to play for the Patriots this season. It also makes him count towards the compensatory pick formula. So a lot of things going on there with Blount, and we'll really be looking at that July 22nd date pretty closely the whole summer just to see if he does sign with another team before then.
Yeah, it really kind of makes it difficult to predict what's going to happen in this situation because there's really not much precedent for, okay, guys who usually get this tender, this is how it usually plays out for them. Yeah. We don't really know. I've never heard of Frank Beatty in my entire life. I had never heard of this tender being used before, and obviously it hasn't been used in a very long time. So yeah, it's really kind of up in the air where LeGarrette Blount is going to go from here.
Yeah, it will be very interesting, and we'll keep a close eye on that. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick both gave extensive interviews. I guess it was kind of over the last few weeks, but I thought that Brady's was a little bit more interesting. He talked to ESPN.com, talked a little bit about when he wants to retire, whether he was upset that Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't traded. Got into a couple other things. Did you have any, I guess, main takeaways from that interview that he did on ESPN?
I mean, I don't think it was anything groundbreaking, but his comments on, I think the whole point, the whole theme of the interview was that Brady is chasing Michael Jordan to become kind of the GOAT of all sports, not even just the NFL. And basically the interviewer, Ian O'Connor, I believe it was kind of asking him, so do you think you're better than XYZ?
Right.
And he wouldn't say that he's the best player in NFL history. He named 5 or 6 players that kind of are in the conversation with him. And he wouldn't even say that he's the best quarterback in NFL history. It was kind of funny that he basically called himself a system quarterback, which is what everybody's kind of the Brady haters have been using for the last 20 years to kind of discount his accomplishments, which I thought was kind of funny. And yeah, I don't know. What did you take away from it?
I thought the entire premise of him chasing Jordan was a little bit of a stretch because
it seemed forced in the
I never saw a quote in there from Brady that even seemed to insinuate that he was chasing Jordan. And he said that, number 6 would be special, but it didn't seem like he was saying that in really the context of Jordan, just that every championship is special. I did think it
my
was
favorite ring's the next one.
Right, exactly. So, and I mean, even if he is chasing Jordan, then you've got Bill Russell ahead of that, and so I mean, yeah, I guess he could. If he wins another championship, then you do start putting him in the conversation with Jordan. But I think you already do. I mean, these are once-in-a-lifetime players that will be talked about, like, until football is done being played, until basketball is done being played. So I don't know if it really matters when you're talking about different sports who jumps ahead of who. But I mean, I do think Brady's the greatest of all time, and even if he doesn't, I think that he's always going to be humble when that question is asked of him. And I think that, you know, if he's throwing Darrelle Revis into the conversation, I think that Brady's considerably better than Darrelle Revis just based on how long he has been playing.
Yeah,
so.
And it was an interesting answer, too, that he gave when he was asked how he felt about Jimmy Garoppolo staying. I think the question was, were you annoyed or frustrated that Jimmy Garoppolo was not traded?
Right.
He basically gave the whole spiel about, oh, it's great to have competition on your team, blah, blah, blah. So I don't think anybody was expecting him to say, yeah, I was really frustrated. I want that guy out of here. Or like, no, I guess maybe you thought he would have said no. Be like, no, Jimmy's a great guy. It's great to have him on the team. I love the competition. And
I think anytime Brady doesn't give a yes or no answer, it kind of becomes a story.
Newsworthy, yeah.
One thing that I thought was another stretch, just to continue being apparently a media critic here, Pro Football Talk tweeted yesterday, would Brady stay in the NFL as a backup? And he kind of used that answer about Jimmy Garoppolo, about how the best player gets the job, and part of being a great teammate is realizing when you have to. Brady's not going to stick around with the Patriots to be Jimmy Garoppolo's backup.
Absolutely not.
And I can't see Tom Brady sticking around with any other team being a backup, just because what's the point at that point?
Yeah, I mean, what do you have to achieve at that point?
You would have to, like, hate your family, I think, to stick around and be a backup somewhere rather than, you know, doing something else with your life at that point. So, Tom Brady, I think once he did say that he wants it to be his choice when he leaves, and I think that becoming a backup, that's no longer your choice at that point. So, I don't think for a second that Tom Brady would stick around.
Yeah.
As a backup. Speaking of Tom Brady, the person who snaps him the ball, good segue there by me.
There you go.
David Andrews signed a 3-year contract extension, which in itself is notable, but then Mike Reese of ESPN.com wrote on Sunday morning that the Patriots were interested in drafting Indiana interior lineman Dan Feeney at number 72 overall, but the Chargers grabbed him at number 71. Going into the draft, we always talked about, all right, what are the surprises that could come? What would shock you? I think an interior lineman would have pretty much shocked everyone, especially since Feeney played right guard and right tackle at Indiana, did not play center. But if they had drafted Feeney, if he did last to them at number 72, I think we'd be talking about either Joe Tooney or Shaq Mason probably switching over to center, and then David Andrews not signing this extension. So it really is an interesting domino trickle-down effect that the Chargers taking Feeney caused, because now Andrews is on board for another 4 years now.
Yeah, I mean, if this guy slips one more spot down, then obviously I don't think they're going to sign David Andrews to a 3-year contract extension if they have a guy who could potentially either replace him or replace one of the guys right next to him. But I thought this contract was interesting. On the surface, it seems like a very good deal for the Patriots.
Definitely.
I mean, once this kicks in next year, David Andrews will be the 14th highest paid center in the NFL. And while he's no superstar or anything, I mean, there's even been some rumblings about his play this season. Some fans weren't too happy with him. I think that was kind of nitpicking.
Yeah.
I think he had a pretty strong season overall. But if you can have a guy who's going to anchor one of the better offensive lines, and he's the 14th highest paid guy at his position, that looks like a pretty good deal for the team.
Yeah, I've seen the word mediocre thrown around with Andrews, but I think that's kind of in comparison to the rest of his teammates, really. You could make the case that either him or Tooney were kind of the weak spots on the line, but that line won a Super Bowl. That line was
very good.
Yeah, and LeGarrette Blount ran for over 1,000 yards and 18 touchdowns. Tom Brady stayed healthy all season, was protected pretty well. One thing on the extension that I did think was interesting was that Joe Banner, who used to be president, CEO, Browns, Eagles, now works for ESPN, called the extension horrible, which
I think he said absolutely horrible.
Absolutely horrible, which Patriots fans immediately jumped on him, thinking that he meant that they had overpaid David Andrews.
Yep.
And then because his wording was kind of unclear.
Yeah, it was over 2 tweets, and it was.
He said that's an absolutely horrible contract for this player, which to me that immediately sounded even to me that for this player. So that's a terrible contract given to, I don't know.
Yeah.
But then he had some snide comment about if you somehow didn't understand I was talking about that's a bad deal for Andrews. Yeah, I mean, it's not a great deal because Andrews was set to be a restricted free agent. And that means that if they wanted to give him a first-round tender, which they probably wouldn't have, that would have been nearly $4 million in 2018. They probably would have given him a second-round tender, which would have been nearly $3 million in 2018. Probably weren't going to give him that original round tender because he came into the NFL as an undrafted free agent. So another team could have signed him to an offer sheet, and the Patriots would have had to give him up for nothing if they chose not to match. So I don't think they would have done that. So we're talking about him making $3 million in 2018 regardless. This gives him some job security, but at the same time, if he had kept improving, then maybe he would have been worth a little bit more. At the same time, not to continue on here, he'll be 28 when he becomes a free agent again. So he will still be young enough to probably sign another contract during the course of his NFL career. Yeah,
it gives him, it's kind of in that weird middle ground.
Yeah.
You have some stability, but you're not, I mean, the fact that he's the 14th highest paid person at his position,
right.
It's not like they're breaking the bank for him. So that security only goes so far.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the meantime, the guy he's going to make what, $600,000 this year.
Right.
And he's going to make $3 million the year after that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of pay raise, get you some stability. You stay in the best organization in football.
Yeah.
It's not a terrible deal. I wouldn't call it absolutely horrible.
No, absolutely
definitely
not.
more of a team-friendly deal than a player-friendly deal, but it's not too bad.
That's what happens when you're the Patriots. You sign players to team-friendly deals, and David Andrews just got married, probably wanted that signing bonus, gets it. And I mean, if someone wanted to give me $9 million, I don't think I'd really complain. So I can't criticize it too heavily.
Yeah, I'd be down.
Last thing here on the docket is that Tom Brady will be on the cover of Madden NFL 18. This is kind of interesting because Tom Brady is a 40-year-old quarterback. And anytime that someone's on the cover of Madden, obviously the possibility of a jinx exists.
The fact that it's, as you see on the screen, the GOAT edition.
The GOAT edition, which he doesn't agree with that word GOAT, so I think that is kind of interesting.
System quarterback edition.
System quarterback edition, exactly. I mean, if he has a down season, if he gets injured, everyone's going to blame the Madden curse. But the reason why he will take a step back or get injured is going to be because he's a 40-year-old quarterback. Yeah. I'm not saying that he will, but if that case comes up, everyone's going to blame the Madden cover, when in all reality, any 40-year-old quarterback might take a slight step back.
Yeah, and the fact that he's kind of
he's embracing it.
He's doing a lot of media around this Madden cover, which, as I assume people do when they get on the Madden cover.
Right.
But it's more than we usually see from Brady in the offseason. I mean, I think the only reason he even did this extensive ESPN interview that we were just talking about earlier was because he was on the Madden cover, and it was ESPN had kind of the relationship with EA and that sort of content sharing, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But he's put out 2 videos of his own, two on his Facebook. One where he's breaking a mirror and walking underneath the ladder, and one at TB12 facility. I think he's like walking around in a bubble or something like that.
Bubble boy. Yep.
Yeah. So
Jake Gyllenhaal style.
Yeah. I guess he's not afraid of no curse. But it's kind of interesting to see him so, I don't know, engaged in this.
I'd like to see him continue with this Jake Gyllenhaal role. Maybe see him as like Donnie Darko in the next one, or do some what was the cowboy movie they did?
Brokeback Mountain.
Yeah, do some Brokeback Mountain maybe. Well, I don't know. I think that he has something going here, but no, I think it's funny that he's embracing the curse, that he's saying that curses don't exist and everything, and jinxes and all that stuff. But I don't know. We'll see. I think that any fan gets a little bit scared when their favorite player on their favorite team gets on the cover of Madden, just because I don't really believe that curses or jinxes exist. But there is kind of a track record here where everyone who does go on the cover seems to take a step back. At the same time, you're only really going to be on the Madden cover after your best season. So I think that that's part of it, is that after your best season, you're going to take a step back. I think the most notable example, obviously, was Peyton Hillis, when he basically did absolutely nothing with the rest of his career after being on the cover of Madden. I don't expect that with Tom Brady. I don't think that he'll disappear into obscurity.
So you're saying Tom Brady's a better football player than Peyton Hillis?
You know,
That's bold.
It's a bold statement. I think this goes into hot take territory. Don't at me on that one, guys. I know it's pretty controversial that Tom Brady's better than a random Browns running back. But I'm gonna go there and say it. I think he is a better football player.
Heard it here first.
Yep. Anything else for you this week? I wrote up a depth chart today. I don't think there was any like major surprises in there.
No, we're still kind of in that holding pattern mode right now. When we got OTAs starting up next week.
Yep.
We'll talk to some rookies on Thursday.
Yep.
The other 3 draft picks we haven't talked to yet, right? So we already talked to Derek Rivers a couple weeks back. We're going to talk to Dietrich Wise, Tony Garcia, and Connor McDermott.
Yep.
Then next week we should get some undrafted free agents, so you'll get to hear from them.
And then I think on, what is it, Thursday we have OTAs that we get to go to?
The 25th.
Whenever that is.
Whenever that is.
25th.
So May 25th. I think we're only, us media folks are only allowed to watch one session of the opening round of OTAs.
Yeah.
So.
And then we'll get to all 3 mini camps. But after OTAs, I'll make the promise here, we haven't even discussed this. We'll do some sort of pod discussing everything that we saw there on OTAs at OTAs. And OTAs are really a great chance to look at quarterbacks, receivers, and cornerbacks because it's really more of a passing camp than anything else. So those are the guys that we'll be focusing on heavily. And luckily, there's a lot of entertaining ones to watch with Stephon Gilmore and Brandon Cooks on board. We'll see how Jacoby Brissett improved, see how Jimmy Garoppolo looks. But that will do it for this week's episode of The Football Word. We will be back on Thursday with Between the Tackles. So watch that and stay on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage.